in the whole industry. We contribute to that. And so having ownership of that role, to my mind, is an important thing. Right, now I want to move on to the idea of sustainability and why the definition is important. Now, as I said earlier, policy is usually to be implemented by legislation or regulation. But legislation depends on clarity of words. And so if we don't actually know exactly what we're looking for, it's not something we should leave to chance. Because you could have the law of unintended consequences affecting you. You know, you raised the issue earlier about whether the cabotage law in Nigeria will apply to, say, people who work on oil rigs, for example. So immediately what that suggests is clarity in the legislation is absolutely essential. Now, we also need to have clarity in the idea of sustainability because you need to take that idea out to the general public. So if you don't know what you're talking about, then how can you sell it to the public, to your stakeholders? Now, one of the problems lawyers have is the temptation to overcomplicate things. Now, I've done a lot of reading, usually around academic writings about this idea of sustainability. But, you know, I see things like sustainability means democracy. Sustainability means good governance. It means freedom. It means justice. It means feminism and women's rights. And lastly, all I can think about is that lovely hymn one sings at harvest. It's like sustainability is all things bright and beautiful. Now, you see, sometimes this is what I mean by the elephant thing. We think, oh, sustainability means, oh, anything that's good, of course. But does it? Should it? I don't think it should. I think we need some clarity. And especially for emerging economies, that clarity is very important because we do not have the resources to do everything at the same time. We don't have the resources to do everything at the same time. So prioritization is very important. Now, I therefore suggest that we ask 3 questions when it comes to the idea of sustainability. Naturally, we want to think about the nature, the environment that one lives in. We need to think about people, and we need to think about our economy and our society. So, there should be 3 pillars: the environmental pillar, the economic pillar, and the social pillar. Now, I'm going to just leave that little quotation there for you to digest. But what is really crucial, I think, is when you look at these 3 pillars, then you know that you're not opening up the ball game to almost anything goes. And it looks a bit more focused. It gives a bit more clarity. Right, now I have got about 4 minutes left. What I will do is I'm going to run through picking up some of the more challenging aspects of the 3 pillars. Okay? Some of these pillars you have already alluded to and talked about this morning and from yesterday. But to focus our mind, if we would think about the environmental pillar, again, this is a huge subject. So we need to start to think about focus. Yeah? So perhaps it is easy to think about it from the life of a ship. So we could think in terms of shipbuilding all the way to ship breaking and ship recycling. And then we map out along that process different environmental considerations and devise a policy along those lines. However, for emerging economies, maritime policy is not so straightforward. I remember about 18 years ago, And I was having a conversation with a representative from the Nigerian Port Authority. And we were having a really good chat about the shipping sector in Nigeria. But 18 years ago, the shipping sector in Nigeria was really about cargo shipping. Today, can I just ask, by a show of hands, how many of you are involved in the oil and gas energy sector? The oil and gas and energy sector. Could you just put your hand up, please, if you are? Okay. And I know some of you work with Exxon, for example, so you may be a bit shy to put your hand up, but a significant number of us today are involved in the oil and gas sector. Now, so this means that when we talk about maritime policy, we cannot remove from the equation the oil and gas sector, which is an energy sector. Because so much of it is associated with the sea, with the maritime sector. So, what I'm trying to get at therefore is that when we think about the environmental considerations, we need to think about the bigger picture at times. But we need to think about it from your own national context. So if I were talking to, say, a fishing country, then we would say, yes, when you think about the environmental concerns in your maritime policy, you cannot take out from the equation the fisheries sector, for example. If that fisheries sector is an important and prominent part of your economy, and so on and so forth. So let's not be over zealous and concentrating only on ships. Okay? Right. The next, of course, is about economic development. Again, here the consideration is how do we make our maritime economy a competitive one? Now, when we talk about that, my suggestion is sometimes it's very easy to look at it in an abstract way. We think about the maritime economy from a very big macro perspective. Now I suggest that for some emerging economies, and I'm not an expert on the Nigerian economy, but for emerging economies, sometimes it's important simply to look to your immediate competitors. Rather than to aspire to this very lofty thing of, oh, we want to rise in the ranks to number 5 in the world, or whatever. Look at your competitors, because the important thing is beating them. There was a race, and I was riveted yesterday watching this. I think it was yesterday, or yeah, I think it was yesterday or the night before. And the UK has a very, very good athlete called Mohammed Farah. And it was running 5,000 meters. He won. We were all really pleased. But he didn't break any world records. But he won. That's what I'm trying to say to us. We don't need to aspire to world-breaking records. We only need to aspire to beat our competitors. Okay. Then, lastly, we need to look at the social dimension, the social pillar. And here, the issue about human resources, human talent, working conditions. Now, of course, some of you will know that the Maritime Labour Convention is coming into force soon, and it will be signed. It will bring together for the very first time the work of the International Labour Organization with the work of the International Maritime Organization. Again, we see some degree of integration there. So when we talk about workers, we no longer concentrate on the seafarer. We think about the people who work on oil rigs. And I suggest that we should also think about port workers, for example. So it opens up a debate, a discussion at least, or a conversation as to who we should bring into what we consider to be the human dimension or the human pillar on a sustainable maritime policy. Right, with that, I would like to say thank you very much. What I've done today was simply to highlight some of the challenges challenges that we have when it comes to trying to design, first of all, trying to refocus a maritime policy and to implement a maritime policy. So I suggest to you as a lawyer that we need to have clarity as to definitions. So we need to know what we're talking about. It's not good enough to say, oh, let's do good. Okay. Well, with that, can I just thank you for your forbearance, and I hope I have been good at sticking to my time, and I look forward to receiving any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Professor Chua, thank you very much indeed for treating us gently and leading us carefully through your exposition this morning. And it was nice to get a change of thought and pace. I think it probably did us all a bit of good. But very interesting, he was talking about policy and sustainability, governance rather than government, and it means a shared approach, which is really important given the conversations we've been having. It's about identifying resources and recognising ideological and political imperatives. And policy is about deliverables. Very interestingly, at the Business Council for Africa, we had a president. Has anybody here got an account with EcoBank? Yeah? Anybody got an account with EcoBank? Okay. Well, you'll probably know Arnold Ekpe then. And he's just become our honorary president of the Business Council for Africa and gave his summer lecture. And interestingly, he said, talk and hope is not a strategy. And we get a lot of hope and talk from politicians. He said this, not me. And so it's very interesting to hear that repeated in a slightly different way by Professor Chua this morning. And policy involves all of us, not just government. And very interestingly, if you don't know what you're looking for, don't leave it to chance. I like that. That's really good. So a lot of really interesting things there for us to take away and think about. And now, I've been really looking forward to this next presentation, Global Onboard Training of Seafarers as an ex-seafarer, by Dr. Hisachi Yamamoto, who's the Secretary General for Global Onboard Training Centre, GOVTC, at Istanbul in Turkey. And I'm rather hoping he's going to provide us with some answers to some of the questions that have been raised this morning. I hope I'm not overloading the expectations, but we very much welcome him to give the last speech of this morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this great opportunity given to me at this very esteemed conference. And first of all, I congratulate you, all of you, without